What's up, friends? You could Gypsy back here today with week 3 of the NPL. Originally we were going to be going up against Postgame, but unfortunately Aim had to drop out of the NPL. He was just he had too much on his plate, so pretty unfortunate. I was definitely looking forward to facing him, but you never know, potentially in another league in the future. But that being said, with Joey's departure, we have seen a new face into the NPL to take his spot, and then that is none other than Schady and his Bayern Mewnich. Now, Schady is a guy I've been watching on YouTube for a long time now. I definitely am a big fan of his content, and I am a firm believer that he's easily one of the best players in the format. He's easily in the top 10 draft format players, in my opinion. I don't think that's even in my opinion. I think that's just straight up. he's really good, and the fact that he doesn't have like a championship by now is just crazy, because he has had so much success in draft leagues and draft tournaments. I think he placed second in the Summer Showdown, or the Token Minorities March Madness Tour, I should say. Yeah, just an amazing player. Very creative builder and very solid battler. So yeah, the fact that Schady was taking over Aim's team was actually very scary. Schady has more experience than Aim in the format. No shots fired there. It's just a matter of fact. Shady's been around for a long time, and he is he's one of the top draft players. So I was definitely I was very excited, because I've never been able to play Schady, unfortunately, but this is going to be the first time we've been able to go at it, so yeah, very excited. But the team Shady's using is scary. People have looked down on Aim's draft for a number of reasons. It lacks a fairy, dragon, and flying resists. But that doesn't mean it's not scary, especially versus my team, which is more of an offensive draft this season. Definitely, he does have a number of threats on his team that just cause my team so much pain. Chief among which is the Tornado T. Now, Torn, you might be thinking, Gypsy, what do you want about, dude? You have a Zapdos, you have the counter, you have an Empoleon, like, you've got an Uxie. Oh man, Torn is a menace. Like, Torn plus Rocks plus Medicham plus like Mamoswine, and then you got Manaphy in the back. Like, it is a dangerous, threatening draft, and it is not something that I was taking lightly. This match was definitely a match that I made multiple teams for. Something like 4 teams I think I built, because this team is just so threatening. So a little rundown of the team that I'm bringing today. First up, we have my specially defensive Zapdos. It's actually a sub-toxic set this week, so aiming to take advantage of his grounds that want to switch in on the T-Bolt, or even his Porygon, so I can sub up on the Torn and click Toxic on the switch. Really, wearing down stuff like a That, maybe specially defensive Marowak. Definitely hindering Porygon 2's effectiveness at checking, my guard and my Zapdos. Toxic is always pretty nice, especially getting it off on the Torn. But to be honest, Zapdos probably won't be the one to Toxic Torn if all goes to plan, but we'll get to that as we go. Sub and Roost allow me to effectively heal up and get a free Toxic off on something on the switch if I do manage to sub up. And next up we have Empoleon. Kind of secondary check to Torn. Depending on Torn's set, it can really pose a threat to my team. If it's an Assault Vest variant, which does make a lot of sense considering I do have stuff like Gardevoir and Keldeo. Just a quick mention, before we did play, Schady was able to make a couple of swaps to the team. Coming in and it not being his team at all, he was able to make a few trades. He did manage to get Fortress on his team, so that does actually give him a really nice steal on his team, being able to resist Fairy and Dragon. So having a special defensive Fortress was definitely a potential bring, which made me think that his Torn may be a potential Life Orb variant, which is definitely threatening to my team. So I am packing the Fighting, Resist Berry, the Chopper Berry on my Empoleon, rocking Stealth Rock, Surf, Ice Beam, and Defog, because I don't want to lose a Hazard Wall. I want to be able to defog on his Fortress if he did decide to bring that stack versus me, for example. Having Rocks and Spikes up is really not nice for my game plan, so yeah, defog was definitely necessary here. Also, Empoleon does beat Fortress 1v1 in that situation, so I do have the chop ability to be able to tank a superpower with ease from a Life Orb Taunt, and Ice Beam is going to be dishing back a big amount of damage. You know, if he expects me to only have Surf, if I don't show Ice Beam for a while, he may think he can live a Surf. I can bop him with the Ice Beam. So next up we have my Life Orb Infernape. Infernape basically is here to kind of just punch holes in his team. He doesn't really have a good resist to Infernape outside of Alolan Marowak, which I have Earthquake for, and his own Manaphy, which could be a potentially defensive Manaphy set with like Rain Dance Rest or something like that. But I do have him on to take advantage of that. So I'm rocking U-turn on this set just to allow me to pivot out versus like Marowak if it's not in range to die to EQ, or like a defensive Manaphy if I can catch him on a rest, something like that. Infernape is definitely looking nice in this matchup, as you can see. Just close combat, you know, blows back Marowak and Porygon 2, as well as being my highest damage dealing attack to Manaphy. Flare Blitz will do a ton to Medicham if not take it out, and yeah, nice to hit Torn for a good amount of damage if I can catch him for some reason switching in on Infernape. So then we have my Rest Talk, physically defensive Uxie with Rocky Helmet. My standard check to Medicham. Medicham is a threat. Medicham is a complete monster, and Uxie checks it quite nicely with this set. It does act as a pretty nice win con as well if I can, you know, scout his sets, get Alolan Marowak out of the way. Uxie is looking pretty good to potentially, you know, set up late game, potentially get a win, depending on how his Manaphy is built. Uxie, you know, may be quite effective this match. Then we have my Guard. So Guard is kind of like it's a wish guard this week, but it is invested. It's especially attack invested guard, so we can spank his team for a whole bunch of damage with Hyper Voice. It does a little over half to offensive Marowak, which is pretty nice. I can 2-KO it on the switch. I do have Encore in case he wants to, you know, set up with Manaphy. If he's like a fat Manaphy, I can lock him into that and just start firing off Hyper Voices. Also pretty nice for like recover Porygon. And then lastly we have my Keldeo. Shoutouts to Noah from the CFA for this. My man Noah. He actually brought this Keldeo set, a very similar set, versus me in the CFA Season 3. It is a sub-protect toxic Keldeo set. Basically here to take advantage of the switch-ins to Keldeo, such as Tangrowth and Torn, if I can sub up on something like one of his ground or fire types, and you know, get a free toxic off when he goes into the appropriate check to Keldeo, really reducing its effectiveness in longevity. If it is like a Life Orb Taunt, that'll make it even nicer wearing it down with that toxic damage. If it's a Soulfest, then yeah, it'll be whittled down quite nicely. So I've spoken for long enough about the team. We'll jump into the match. Looking at team matchup, obviously Torn is a huge threat to my team. Zapdos would make sense, even Empoleon as a lead, but I did feel as though keeping Rocks off my side at the beginning was crucial. I really wanted to pressure his potential lead rocker, and if he does lead with Torn, I do have Zapdos and Empoleon on the back. So I'm going to lead off with Keldeo, just wanting to scare out a potential Marowak or Mamoswine lead. You guys are going to see he does lead off with Mamoswine, as we do lead off with Keldeo. Now here, I go for the substitute, two reasons. Like, chances are he's going to switch out to Porygon, Manaphy or Torn. If he does decide to stay in, it's likely there's like a Sash Endeavor set, and I don't want my Keldeo to take an Endeavor plus an Ice Shot the next turn, removing it from the game, because it is such a nice mon in this particular matchup. So I'm going to go for the sub here, but he does actually switch out, go into his Torn, and this is pretty nice for us. We're behind the sub. In this situation, I could have protected just to get a bit more health, but that may have shown Shady straight up that I was that set, because I know he's aware of that set. He watched my video, and we had a bit of a laugh about that set together. So yeah, I am just going to fire off a Toxic this turn, not wanting to get greedy and potentially ruin the gimmick of this set. I'm going to get the Toxic off. He's not Life Orb, so that's pretty good to know. He could potentially be a Z move on this Torn, so that's something I've got to keep in mind. Aimed at taking down my Zapdos once it gets in range of something like Z Smackdown or Z Icy Wind, something like that. He does fire off the Hurricane, and then goes for the U-turn on my Protect, which is pretty nice. So trying to predict my Zapdos to come in. I go out to my Gardevoir here. Reason being is it doesn't invite in his Rocker necessarily. He could have U-turned on my Zapdos and gone straight onto Mamoswine, but if he's not a Sash lead Mamoswine, then Guard can kill with Hyper Voice. But it also does kind of encourage in his Marowak, but Zapdos is quite passive in this matchup, outside of beating Torn and Manaphy, so I didn't want to give him a free switch into Mamo. And allow him to get up rocks freely. I wanted to kind of force him in a situation where he has to make the offensive play. So I do get the trace the regenerator here, so that's why I felt guard as well was a pretty nice switch in, because I didn't expect him to go for the hurricane there, and if he did, I'd be able to wish up. He's not life orb, so it's not going to be doing too much, and I can get the regenerator health back with the switch out. So he's going to U-turn out, go right on out into his Marowak right here, as I'm going to switch onto my Empoleon, knowing that I can tank any hit he wants to go for. If he's, we're going to scout the damage here and determine if he's Thick Club. If he is, we can play accordingly. He goes for the Shadow Bone and gets the crit, and it does 89%, so that's very unfortunate. Does a ton of damage, but he doesn't want to risk his Marowak dying here to something like a Hydro Pump or a Surf. I am in Torrent range, so Surf is definitely killing from that range of health. But I do take this opportunity to set up my Stealth Rocks. I lost nothing by it. If he stayed in, he killed me, but I got up Rocks. If he stayed in, he died to Surf if I went for Surf. So it was in his interest to switch out into either Taunt or Manaphy, as he does go Manaphy. Now I'm going to switch out, go into my guard here, as I don't want to risk this Manaphy setting up. I don't expect it to be max speed timid. Reason being, I have Zapdos, Empoleon, Guard, and Shaman, who all awkwardly speed tie with Manaphy. I don't really think Schady would risk the potential tie here. I think he's going to be a more bulkier Manaphy spread. Either that, or at least like a fat special attacker. I don't think he's going to be like a max speed variant. He's probably going to be like a Z move for Shaman or something like that. So he does go for the Energy Ball, as it only does 19.8%. So we're going to Mega Evolve this turn, fire off a Hyper Voice, as it does 56, which is pretty nice, as he goes for the U-turn here. So he's going to get momentum out into his Mamoswine. Now here he could be one or two things. He could be a Sash. He could be a Sash variant, trying to bluff the Scarf and Mamo here. And if he is a Scarf Mamo, he could take out my guard here with Iron Head or anything really. Icicle Crash, Earthquake. Mamo's really strong, and so that would have been pretty bad. I didn't want to lose guard here, especially if his Manaphy is somehow like a Carmine variant or something like that. So I am going to switch out here, go right out into my Empoleon just to sack it off. I don't feel as though he could make the Stealth Rock play if he wanted to bluff from the Scarf, but that would be a really interesting bluff on his part if he did want to risk guard, because I have shown to be faster than his Manaphy. I am faster than his Mamoswine, definitely on my guard set, so I didn't expect him to go for the rocks there. This turn though, I do expect him to potentially go for the rocks, predicting him to switch out into his Taunt or his Manaphy or his Porygon 2. So I'm just going to fire off the Surf, not wanting to let him get up rocks. The fact that he's Thick Club Marowak led me to believe that this was indeed most likely his rock setup, as a Shadow Bone like Thick Club set with Marowak probably has Flare Blitz, SD to break more effectively, and something like Bone Meringue or something like that, or Wisp maybe. But I am just going to go for the Surf here, as Mamoswine does go down to the Surf. So that's a big threat on my team taken care of, and that actually does show that Shady was bluffing the Choice Scarf very nicely. So nice play on his part, coming into the guard, making me switch out like that. Definitely, but to be honest, Empoleon wasn't doing much the rest of this match anyway, so it wasn't too great a loss on my part. He can't set up rocks now, unless he is for some reason Thick Club, Stealth Rocks, Marowak, which I doubt, but I'm going to pressure him offensively. Well, that's my aim anyway. I don't plan to let him get a chance to set up rocks if I can help it. So in comes Torn. I'm just going to protect. I don't really lose anything by it, apart from getting more Toxic Chip on him. And the fact that I got rocks up now means that his Regenerator won't be as effective, especially with one round of toxic damage off on him. Effectively, he's only healing 2% health after rocks and toxic damage are taken into account. So yeah, his Torn is looking in an interesting situation here. It's getting its Hurricanes worn down, and right now I am going to switch out, go into my Zapdos here, as he does go for the Hurricane. He gets a crit and he gets a Confusion. So Zapdos copying a bit of bad luck here today, but I'm going to go for the Toxic, predicting his Porygon or his Alolan Marowak to come in, as he does go for the U-turn here. In comes the Marowak, as we are going to fire off the Toxic, and that is pretty nice. Getting the Toxic off on this along with the Stealth Rock is going to be pretty huge, as I do go into Keldeo here, knowing I can easily tank a Shadow Bone if he does want to go for it. He actually goes for the Sword Stance here. I think predicting me to like roost up that turn or even go into Infernape, but he does go for the Sword Stance, as now I'm in a situation where I can just sub. I really lose nothing by sub, If he did want to switch out to Taunt, or even Porygon 2 to tank the Surf, I would have been in a situation where I could stall them with Protect the next turn and then click Surf, just putting them at a lower range of health in the long run. But he does go for the attack here, kind of sacking off his Marowak, I suppose. Because rocks are up, Marowak is no longer that useful versus my team. So now I am just going to click Surf here. No point Keldeo being in a low amount of health, as he has kind of shown me that he is willing to sack off. So now I am going to go into my Uxie here. Whilst I could have clicked Protect that turn, I didn't want to risk him being like a sub Baton Pass variant into something like a Tail Glow Manaphy. Could have been quite the threat versus my team. So I'm just going to go into my Uxie, as we do take a flinch. We do take the Fake Out crit. Pretty unfortunate again, but he does go for the high jump kick here. It only does 36%, as we do get the psychic damage off on the Metachan. Now, Metachan is in a situation here where he can just kind of like, he can either switch out or he can attack Uxie, trying to take it out, just get up low for the rest of his mons. But I'm just going to click Rest here, knowing that not even an Ice Punch is going to be able to take me out of this range of health. This high jump kick is only doing 36.4, so Ice Punch does 26, as we do get the rest off here. And now Metachan's in a situation where he could preserve it if he wants, but he does choose to sack it off. Like, this thing wasn't breaking Uxie anyway, so I can definitely understand that play. We do go for the Sleep Talk here, because like I said, I am a Sleep Talk Calm Mind variant. But we just do get the rest that turn. So we get the Psychic, sorry, that turn, after he'd already gone down to the helmet. So now, now Porygon 2 comes in. And now, for those of you guys who don't know, Shady is the man who has loved Porygon 2 from way back in the day. I don't think anyone loves P2 as much as Shady. He actually inspired me to use it in back in CFA Season 2. Just watching his run with it. But Porygon 2 comes in and he gets the download raise, and I'm thinking, okay, nice download raise. He chose not to go for Trace, which I guess makes sense. Nothing really traceable on my team that he'd like, maybe apart from Guards Pixelate, but nonetheless, he does go into his Porygon. He gets the download raise, and I'm thinking, okay, he could be Shadow Ball or something like that. I'm just going to click Sleep Talk here, hoping for a Calm Mind. I do get the Psy Shock damage, and that does 24% to a Porygon 2, right? That does 24%, okay? And this is an Uxie. Uxie is weak as fuck. I won't lie to you. This thing has like 75 special attack or something. It's very low. That did 24 to a Porygon 2. So as soon as I saw that damage, as soon as I saw the special attack raise, I knew it was over. His Porygon 2 fires off the life. He fires off the Trick Room this turn. I'm getting ahead of myself. Then fires off the Tri Attack and does 58% to Uxie. This is an Uxie. This thing has base 130 special defense. Although I'm not invested, it still has a ton of special defense. He's under Trick Room now, and he's got that special attack boost. So yeah, definitely a huge threat. A very nice bring by Shady, but I'm just going to rest up this turn. I wanted to scout his set, see if I can get some Calm Minds up and potentially 1v1 this Porygon. Porygon says no, that ain't happening today. So I am going to get the Calm Mind up here, and this is going to put me at a range of health after the Calm Mind where I can live a Tri Attack on 2%. Just kind of whittling down his Trick Room turns and getting some nice Life Orb damage off on the Porygon 2. Now he's in a situation where he could have potentially recovered up and perhaps gotten off another Trick Room whilst my Uxie was still around that turn, although I was in a situation where I could have actually rested up there with the +2, so that was +2 special defense. That was probably not something he wanted to allow, because then Uxie would have been able to 1v1 the Porygon 2 after getting that +2 in Spit F, just because it gets so fat after a couple of Calm Minds. And Psychic was doing 24% at neutral, so it would have been doing around 50% at +2, so that was definitely probably in his best interest just to take out my Uxie there. Nonetheless, I'm just going to go into Zapdos, as I know this guy can take him out with the T-Bolt. Considering how much damage Uxie's Psychic did, Zapdos was a pretty safe play here. So Zapdos also does punish potential Manaphy. Had I gone into my Infernape that turn, that would have invited his Taunt to come in next. Bringing Zapdos in does mean his Manaphy has to come in. Now, whilst Zapdos probably does outspeed this Manaphy, it definitely outspeeds because my guard was slower. I didn't want to risk him being Wakan. He hadn't shown an item. I didn't want to risk him being like Wakan and somehow living the hit because I'm not invested, and critting me with Ice Beam or freezing me or something like that, because Zapdos is my win con. So I am just going to switch out here, go out into my Gardevoir. It may seem like a bit of an unnecessary play, but it was my smartest, safest play. So no point choking away my best means of beating this Tornadus, in case he does have like Iron Tail for guard, so it just wasn't really worth risking it there. So I am going to go for the Wish this turn. Could have gone for the Hyper Voice, but I do Wish up as he does go out into his Taunt, as I know that after the next round of Stealth Rock damage, Manaphy would definitely be in range to do a T-Bolt, even if he is Wakon Berry. So I'm just going to switch out here this turn, go out into my Zapdos, knowing I'll be able to, you know, even heal up a lot of health with the lefties after the Wish, even if he does get like another crit Hurricane or something like that, or even if he does go for the Smackdown, the Zemu Smackdown wouldn't have actually killed Zapdos from that range. So now Zapdos will receive the Wish back. He does actually have the Iron Tail for guard, so very nice prep on his part. I do believe this to be an Assault Vest Taunt, just given that moveset, because Iron Tail does take advantage of Taunt of guard, who Taunt could tank a Hyper Voice from with the Assault Vest. So now Zapdos gets its sub up. We're going to get crit again by a Hurricane, which actually breaks our sub, which shouldn't have broken our sub without the crit, but you know, it's not the end of the world because Manaphy is going to come in this turn and he's going to die to a T-Bolt. So that is the match against Schady. A good game, man. Definitely a fun one. I really enjoy it. This team is not, obviously Shoutout didn't draft his team, he inherited it from AIM, so I know he's not like 100% like, you know, comfortable with it. This is not the team he would have drafted, but it was still fun to play nonetheless. I'm sure we'll get a chance to play in another league sometime where, you know, we've drafted our own team, so I look forward to that. But yeah, definitely a scary team to prep for, and an even scarier coach. So yeah, I definitely had fun playing my man Shady. If you guys haven't, for some reason, you know, checked out Shady, definitely go and check out his channel. He's got a ton of great content, and he's got, you know, he's in multiple leagues. He's actually a PPL, like one of the best PPL players. I think he actually runs the PPL. I could be wrong in saying that, but I think he's at least one of the guys who runs it over there. So yeah, definitely go and check him out. Check all his content out. Go and drop a sub if you aren't already subscribed to him, and go and see his side of the match, because it'll be interesting to hear the match from his perspective. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, yeah, really appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video and let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the match and the team. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.